861 dropped on the 17th of January 2024, so 862.
There is a new integration gateway property that I think's been a long time coming.
The reason that got me thinking about AI is because I was looking at this, I was like, well, this kind of sounds like AI light.
They're adding more and more ways to kind of run your own DPK pre-post type of steps.
I think this is the killer feature of 862.
Well, hey, Graham and Kyle, thank you so much for joining me for this episode together. And today we want to talk about the technology planned features and enhancements, the document for the new PeopleTools 8.62 upcoming release. So Kyle, Graham, welcome. And what are your guys' thoughts on this new PeopleTools 8.62 release?
Well, I think it's pretty exciting. This is always that kind of tease right before the actual release. Gets you a little excited for the new tools that are upcoming. It's always a time that I think it's worth looking through. But a lot of just kind of, high level, broad strokes. This is what you might expect. But I think there's some good stuff in here that we'll definitely want to talk through, user experience and things like, some search framework updates. And as a PeopleSoft administrator, getting into some of the more lifecycle management stuff too, that's pretty cool. But I don't know, Graham, if you had thoughts on how you take this document.
No, the plan features overview here, the roadmap. It is a teaser to what's coming, and it is coming. I've blogged about this before and calculated that there are 476 days on average between each major PeopleTools release since 8.50. And 8.61 dropped on the 17th of January 2024. So 8.62, well, add your 476 days to 17th of January, you get early May. So, yeah, I'm not saying that's when it will land, but yeah, they've written up the roadmap, and I can imagine that, it's coming soon.
You know that timing aligns well with the Blueprint 4D conference at the beginning of June.
It sure does.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I like that. So going through this document, it starts out with user experience. And I was reading through this. So it says, for example, fluid homepages will have added flexibility and full control over design, layout, and styling. Okay, so thinking about that, today we have tiles, and those tiles can be, say, 1 by 1 or 1 by 2 or 4 by 4 or various sizes. And then we add into that what they did in later tools releases, which was create the expandable, collapsible sections. But without some screenshots, it's hard to tell exactly where this is going, but this does sound like a dramatic change to home pages. Go ahead.
I think this is the killer feature of 8.62. I think it's not just because it's the first in the list if you go to the roadmap, but I read through the whole roadmap. This is the standout feature. And if you've been at one of the events last year, the Reconnect deep dive event or the Dallas Blueprint 4D event, you will have seen screenshots of this.
Yeah, I believe
I am really excited about this new feature.
Yeah, I believe Shashank showed the different sections and the idea and concept in his Reconnect session last fall.
I think visually, anything that impacts the application like that is a hit with end users and customers of PeopleSoft. Something very visual. It's probably as impactful as moving from the classic pagelet portal view to the dynamic, responsive tiles of the fluid home pages that we know and love today.
Yeah. So this is something that's been interesting to me. Because we teach Fluid all the time. And so in our environments, we log into PUM images, and watching the content change on the home pages with the various PUM releases to where we started out with static tiles. And those home pages load up pretty quick with a static tile. Then we got to pivot grids. And it isn't that you have to wait for all the content to load, except if you go to the nav bar or do something else, then yeah, you kind of do have to wait for all those connections to load. And then we got to Insights dashboards and seeing Insights dashboards tiles. And I actually guilty of removing a lot of those analytics from home pages because of the load time and waiting for those to load. And you think about when somebody logs in, if a homepage, design of a homepage is that each tile represents a different business process. And so when I log in, if I've got 12 tiles, that means 12 different potential business processes. Now, when I log in, I'm targeting one of those. I'm not targeting all 12. So I don't see any value in waiting for all 12 of those to load. So that's something that's been interesting to me, to watch the home pages change, and then to think, okay, so wait, because it also mentions dynamic types of content in the home pages. So does that mean, for example, that when I log in, it'll say, these are the last 5 things that you visited. Do you want to pick up here? What is that exactly? I'm not sure.
And I think that's part of the fun of this document, right? It's like, what does that really mean, right? Because Jim, I think you kind of nailed it. Like, that's kind of how they've had these big bang or these kind of like wow moments on the homepage, is a lot of this dynamic content, whether it's pivot grids or some of the insight stuff. But there's a cost to some of that. If you kind of overdo it, it gets slow. What I'm trying to read through this is ability to design dynamic types of content layouts. So maybe the layout itself is dynamic versus the actual content, if that makes sense. So maybe, like you said, like maybe something only shows if like there's a notification or an alarm or something, or if like, hey, this box is bigger now because I want your attention, versus just a big box that may or may not have a notification in it. And that doesn't really change dynamically based on the content. So things like that, maybe. I don't know, but the getting out of the box of the fixed tile sizing is something that I'm really curious to see how they handle, because I think that does make it more of a modern UI that we might be used to with, other non-ERP systems or more modern ERP systems. And I think that's a big thing that to Graham's point, really are looking for with PeopleSoft. They like PeopleSoft, but they just want the nice shiny stuff. And hopefully this is delivered with this feature.
I remember one of our customers who did an upgrade to, I think it was 8.54, and we took the opportunity to introduce nothing more than some of the new fluid home pages and navigation. And the morning it went live, the PeopleSoft support manager was inundated with calls from all the senior management in the organization congratulating him that they'd got rid of this old PeopleSoft system and replaced it with something that looked absolutely amazing. Of course, it was PeopleSoft. I mean, the thing that really intrigues me in this written text about the flexibility in homepages is it says we're going to get full control over the design. Ooh, what does that mean? What does full control over design mean? I mean, I've got full control over page layouts through application designer and style sheets and the controls that we get with app designer. I got full control over that. So what is full control over the design of the underlying content and the homepage is going to actually look like? What tools are we going to get? I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, so you actually scared me there for just a moment, because as much as I love the concept of full control, I do know that with full control, that gives us the capability to create some really ugly and not necessarily intuitive and usable experiences. Maybe you might say that one of the nice things about tiles is they formed a template and you really couldn't go wrong with that. Whereas with full control, I mean, I'm pretty sure that people will stick to templates, but that is interesting, right? To think that how far you could go with that. Yeah. Now, here's something I've been thinking about with this, because usability is an issue, and that is that when I log in, like for example, for me, if I log in and all I saw was a search bar, I would say, okay, I'm going to search for, maybe I want to do time entry. So I'm thinking of words, and as you're typing into the prompt, if it were just a search bar, what would I type? I might type something in that means time entry to me, but not to the search indexes and search engines.
Jim, you might not need to type anything. the third bullet in our user experience section of the roadmap says users will be able to review all their favorite saved searches from a centralized page. It doesn't say this, but I'm hoping it also says it also includes not just saved searches, but the automatically remembered searches that got introduced with the configurable search pages in 8.60. If it can remember all of those and consolidate them all into a single centralized page, I wouldn't mind seeing that the first thing when I log in. What I was working on yesterday is likely to be the thing I'm working on today.
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking as well. And that's kind of where I was going with the dynamic content is, dynamic content. So what I'd like to see in that dynamic content is, and your users, they're probably all using the same components all the time. So instead of me seeing 12 tiles and guessing, why don't I see the 3 that I always use up front? And then how do we order them? Do we order them by the most commonly used to the least? And then is it just you, or is it people within your job role or within your organization? Or also, what about time related? So for example, open enrollment just started. So we're going to change the dynamic content so that it's based off of timing. But anyways, as I was thinking about all of this, the question that always pops in my mind is, where does AI fit? So does AI then help with the language models and looking at the data to figure out what to display to you based off of some sort of AI models?
It's important to dream up use cases for AI. The steam engine didn't get invented overnight. There were loads of experimenting and trials, and boilers blew up and people died during the development of the steam engine. Like, no one's going to die during the development of AI models, but you got to experiment. You got to think, how might I be able to use this? And vast majority of ideas are just going to end up in the bin, but there'll be that one idea that morphs into another idea that morphs into another one that will become the thing that creates value for organizations. You just got to hope that the people who do that are the ones spending the money and not you.
Well, that's what I'm curious with this full control on the UI, or the user experience thing is, Oracle kind of gave us tiles, like, this is what you can do. Now they maybe have some more flexibility to it. There's going to be some customers out there that they're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff, I'm guessing, with this, and hopefully those ideas share within the community, maybe even back to Oracle and some of these templates. And there are probably going to be some customers doing some bad ideas too. Let's be honest. Jim's point, some scary stuff maybe, but I am excited to see how this, what this means by full control and flexibility, or what that really means, because there's probably going to be some creative stuff being put out there by customers.
Yeah, and I mentioned AI because when it comes to cloud, it's pretty easy to see how the cloud vendor can, SaaS, can just plug AI in, start learning off of the data that's in the database that they already control. Are you guys hearing or seeing of PeopleSoft customers plugging AI into their on-premise or cloud, but licensed software?
We're hearing about customers wanting to improve their processes through smarter algorithms,
right?
Like document recognition.
Right.
Not just character recognition of, say, an expense receipt or an invoice, but actually interpreting the data in order to help improve that process. And that's a great use case for, if you want to call it AI. What was it, Arthur C. Clarke? That great quote of his, I can never get it right, but all sufficiently advanced forms of technology are indistinguishable from magic. I mean, he grew up in an era where a smartphone would be considered breathtakingly intelligent, but actually it's just a smart algorithm. So I'm hearing from the customers that I work with here at version 1 that they're interested in using smarter and smarter algorithms to improve their business flows. And but back to our planned features roadmap, under the user experience section, the second bullet there says that the prompt and drop down fields will incorporate suggestions to display the most relevant values at the top. How? How is it going to determine what is most relevant to me in a prompt that might contain potentially millions of potential values? What is going to be most relevant to me? Again, I am absolutely fascinated. Whoever wrote this has done a good job.
Yeah, but you're right, Graham, because that is, I mean, right. In what we want is business processes that are more automated through better algorithms and recognition. And that's what this is. And that's kind of like the promise of AI when it comes to enterprise systems, right? So the reason that got me thinking about AI is because I was looking at this, I was like, well, this kind of sounds like AI light, meaning maybe we don't have a full AI engine behind it, but it's clearly better algorithms to produce automated and better solutions for us. Yeah. What do you guys say we move on to search framework?
Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, just on the search framework topic, the results of your search in the global search bar are driven by what you visited most recently. But also wound into that is what your colleagues, what other users have accessed as well. And I'm wondering if that might be part of the algorithm that gets snuck into the prompt and drop down fields. If 90% of my user base are all using the same business units or inventory items, maybe they're the ones that get bumped to the top of the list as being considered more relevant. I don't know.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I think Jim, you mentioned like this kind of like AI light or something, or this the idea of we've got this data, let's leverage it to make the experience better. That's where I think the search framework is the easy thing, right? We've got a search framework, we've got now insights for dashboards. They're just adding more and more. They've added the real-time indexing on top of the search framework. Down in the administration section here, there's some bullet points as far as from the back end, kind of improving that from an administration standpoint. That's going to be huge, making it easier. There may be some customers where, they weren't really sure when to jump in with RTI or jump in with insights. So the back end stuff, and me as an administrator, I mean, that I always like to see that, right? Make it easier for customers to turn on and use this stuff because it's going to add so much value to the end user. But yeah, just their approach of keeping more and more improvement to that global search bar and making that kind of the focal point on top of the homepage tiles that we just talked through is something that I'm really excited that they're continuing to kind of invest in and move forward, because it really has changed everything, at least from my standpoint, as far as navigation. Just go to the search bar and actually start typing, and it works, and it's relevant. Like that's huge. Yeah. That's huge. That's huge for PeopleSoft.
So, what do you guys think of the long labels for the long description in the search results? It used to be the root folder, and now it's the longer description. Has that been helpful for you?
I think so. I think it's been helpful, but I think the most helpful thing in the global search is it remembering where you've been in the navigation, most recently visited or most recently used. And if you enable the keywords on transactions, it's which transactions you visited, which purchase orders you were working on yesterday or last week, or that employee that you are working on their job profile, 2 weeks ago. That's still there in the search results. You don't have to go looking for it. If you were working on it recently, it's going to be there. And it sounds like one of the new features they're adding in 8.62 is the ability to specifically remove something from your search results. So if it's a purchase order, wow. It's a big purchase order, it's a couple of 100 lines long, it's got loads of schedules and distribution lines in it, and you've finally finished it and submitted it and it's gone. Maybe you don't want to see it in the top position anymore, in which case just click the X, whatever it is, and it might disappear until you come to need it again. That could be interesting.
Yes. So I was I was thinking about search, and the history of search was, Yahoo and Excite, and it was very portal based, just pure internet search. And so
Mm.
the idea of the PeopleSoft search and the menu search was recognizing that people don't browse the internet from portals, they browse the internet from search. And so we could provide a similar experience in PeopleSoft by providing them with a search engine and a better search experience. And basically Google being the metaphor for a better search experience. But I was thinking about today's PeopleSoft homepage and thinking, have we actually achieved Google or have we achieved Yahoo/Excite?
Wow. My mind's going back in time here, Jim. That's I like these references here. Um, I don't know. I think it it does, I think, make us realize that, yeah, we want a search bar and we want that to be nice and automatic suggestions and all this. Um, so those tiles of drilling through a tile to a list of more links, like maybe that's something we want, but we want the homepage to have more like dynamic content that might matter, right? So that's, again, I think they pair well where we're kind of moving maybe a little more navigation, especially stuff that's not like super quick click, but maybe you don't use it very often. Search is the way to go. But if it's a quick click on a tile, maybe that's good enough. Or again, more dynamic content there. I don't know. But I'm really curious on if in the notes here they say the search suggestions widget will offer a seamless mechanism to switch context to other search categories. So again, it's going to default to navigation, but that's where you get into, it's more than just navigation. It's, PO stuff like that. So what this seamless mechanism is to switch to other context, that's got my attention as well. Because that is where it is, again, more than just let me navigate generically. Like, no, I want to, search for a specific purchase order or something. But and all I know is maybe a vendor's name and the date or something like that. That's where you gotta get, at least in my mind, get to more of that Google level of search, right? Where it's got a lot of power to it.
What I was thinking is that the original designer, the thought was that the homepage real estate was very valuable. And so these different portal vendors threw everything at the homepage with the intent or hope that it would draw users. And then Google came along with nothing, just a search bar. And so it just, completely destroyed the idea. It's like, oh, wait, throwing stocks and weather and all of that did not attract people. Actually, nothing attracted people more than all that other stuff. And as I was comparing that to a PeopleSoft homepage, I thought, wow, when you log in, we've got everything there. And it felt to me more like an old portal experience than perhaps a Google search experience. I'm not saying that the Google search experience is the right thing for enterprise applications. I was just thinking, I wonder.
I think there are some natural behaviors that we have got used to in the Google-like search experience that we've seen over the last few PeopleTools releases, Oracle starting to bring into global search within PeopleSoft. Things like remembering where you last visited through the use of the most recently used, being able to automatically update the indexes using RTI. And by the way, I can't get too excited about RTI. Just do it. Don't tell me about it. In 1986, I was working on a Hewlett-Packard 3000 system, which was revolutionary because the data that you entered right there and then actually got updated in the database in real time. So I can't get too excited about RTI. It just should be happening, right? But I think whilst we like some of the Google search features, if they are poorly implemented in your application, you notice it a lot. You really notice it. And I think under the search framework heading of our roadmap that we have, the third bullet point says the search suggestion widget will also offer a seamless mechanism to switch context to other search categories. Try it.
Yes.
If
Yes.
you put a
Seamless
keyword
mechanism.
into the global
Mhm.
search, it'll default to the menu, but you don't want to search the menu. You want to search your purchase orders. So you change the category to purchase order. What does it do? Wipes out your search, and you've got to type it again.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very seamless.
Mm-mm.
And that experience that we're used to in Google, you've got to absolutely perfect it in your application for you not to notice any flaws in it. And it's progressively getting better and better. This whole experience in PeopleSoft. Will it ever just be a single search box? No, it won't, because this is an enterprise application.
Right.
I want dynamic content in there. There are things I need to do to run my business. The Google search box on your mobile phone or your desktop is meeting the needs of a few billion people around the planet, all who have different requirements to get to where they want to get to. Yeah.
Yeah. One last question for you on search. So RTI, what do you think about the portal registry index? It has not been RTI before, uh, and I think the thought is that the portal registry only changes through development and migrations. So then if you migrate new content references, then is there really a need for RTI on the portal registry? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'm with the idea of like you could probably run an incremental when you do a migration of a CREF,
Mm.
but at the same time, let's just get RTI going for everything we can,
Yep.
right? So I mean, there's when you're talking about scale and like batch processing, there's some stuff to think through with RTI. But that's really not what we're talking about with the CREF change. It's more
Right.
of, do we really need to? No, but can we without much concern? Yeah, I think we
Mm.
can. So why
Yeah.
not? That's
Yeah.
I
kind of my
agree.
thought.
So this is one that I've seen that for me would be very helpful because that's where I live, is in the portal registry, creating content references and in the user experience. A significant portion of the user experience is the portal registry. And there are so many processes now that actually build content references, like Tile Wizard, for example. The end result can be a content reference. So I was looking at that thinking, I wonder if there's a case to be made for RTA for portal registry structures now, rather than just saying, oh, that's just development. We'll just run an incremental after a migration. Yeah, good. My thoughts exactly. So on to the next topics. There are a few of them here. There's configurable search, there's query. What are your thoughts on what's new in 8.62 and those?
I highlighted two under the section of query. I work for version 1, and we have a large PeopleSoft team, and every Tuesday at 12 we have tech talk. It's a beautiful alliteration. Tuesday tech talk at 12, and we just meet for half an hour and we'll just brainstorm anything technologically related to PeopleSoft. And for the last 3 weeks, the last 3 Tuesdays, we've been going through the roadmap together, just sharing ideas. And for me, these two got highlighted, and they are that query will allow users to configure and display a text-based header and footer on the query prompt and results page.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, it's so simple. Is it a mind-blowing, enterprise level changing feature? No, but it's nice. I can now include some descriptive text at the footer and header of my query results. The second one is, when a query does not return any data, scheduled query will optionally allow users to suppress the email output to recipients. Thank you, PeopleSoft team, at last. Thank you.
Yes. So the other two I noted were the partial field masking, of course, whereas right now I believe it's a full mask. So that could be helpful. But this one is a question for me. So administrators will have the ability to copy queries from one user to another. So cool. I like that. It's the part that comes after that, while retaining ownership of the original user. What does that mean? Because today, when I think of copying anything today, it creates a completely separate copy. And so now it isn't one owner, it's two owners of two completely separate definitions. So what does that second half mean?
I had exactly the same question when I read that, and we talked about it in our tech talk internally. I didn't get it. I didn't think that was a problem today. What problem is this feature solving? I don't know.
So today, can you save a new query to another user? Or that's not allowed today, correct?
I forgive
Maybe
me.
that's it.
I thought you could
Hang on.
copy
I'm logging in.
queries. You just thank you, Graham. Confirmed. But you can't go from private to public without changing the name of the query. But I thought you could copy from user to user just by checking the box and choosing the action copy. But
Regardless of how this is worded, because I think that's maybe part of the problem is that the last bit, like you said, Jim, is confusing. I have Kyle's query, right? I've got some special query that only I know how to write, and I want to make that query available to you, Jim. I'd save it or copy it as Jim's query. I would retain ownership of my original Kyle query, but you would have the new Jim query. And from that point on, they could differ and drift, but it's kind of copying essentially what a point in time of my query to you, and now it's a whole new query, still private. That's how I would understand this to work. I don't know if how this is worded lines up with that, but that to me that would be the use case. I don't know if that's what's happening.
Somebody asked for it, right?
Yeah,
The PeopleTools team built it because somebody asked for it. I think let's track them down. It's going to be on the idea space somewhere, and we'll find out who they are, and we'll say, "Why did you ask for this?" Because
and
I've just tried to log into one of my systems to test it, but it's 10 to 10 here in the evening, and we shut all of our PeopleSoft systems down at 8 o'clock in the evening because we run them all in OCI, and we don't like to spend money in the evenings when no one's using them. So.
Right.
I couldn't check it. Sorry.
Yeah. So this one, Kyle, I was thinking you probably have some good insight on the lifecycle management section.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I've had it on my list, if you will, to maybe try to get Usage Monitor used more, mostly in relationship to test framework. So the stuff that they're doing with Usage Monitor, making it easier, and now it looks like they're adding some tracking of batch processes, as well as some manage objects, ADS, blah, blah, blah. I like the idea. I just still haven't run into a lot of customers using Usage Monitor a ton. It sounds powerful, but more just in general, I like to see them trying to move that forward a little bit. I don't know if you guys have run across much usage of Usage Monitor with customers. Have you?
We haven't come across it in customers. We've turned it on ourselves in our lab, and we've experimented, and we've looked at what it does, and it's either very, very verbose because you're running it at a user level, and then if you do it at the aggregated level, we've had some unusual results that we can't explain. So as a starter, first release of a feature, I think it's a fantastic idea, and using that data in lifecycle management processes, absolute win. I was hoping there'd be a bullet point here that talked about improvements to its basic functionality. Maybe there is. I mean, this is a roadmap of key features, so it doesn't include all the tweaks and little kind of refinements that the tools team do, and hopefully may have done with Usage Monitor. We'll see. I like the idea of adding batch processes, though.
Yeah.
Some batch processes are really, really complex, and you end up with customizations in them. And of course, you know what batch processes you run. You just query the PSPRCS request table, and you'll know what processes you run. Do you know what objects it's hitting? That's an interesting feature. I like that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say with that, like things like budget check or these complex app engines that reference an app engine that reference this can really help with that if you're diving in and customizing levels deep in an app engine tree, if you will. So But sorry,
Yeah.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah. So this first bullet, customization-centric insights delivered directly in PeopleTools. The base allows people to make data-driven decisions, customization level within each environment, percentage of customizations. I was curious, again, talking about those smart algorithms helping us make better decisions. Will this allow us to look at through insights, be able to tell, like Graham, for example, you've got a stat that says how often Oracle touches an object. And so if you customize that object, then once every 2 years, you're going to have to retrofit that. But we know that through their release cycle and the life of a new component, that Oracle is going to be touching something every release when they first create that thing. Like, for example, in HR, the fluid personal information, fluid job data, they're probably touching those every release because they're brand new. Versus something like location table that they probably haven't touched for 6 years because, they added drop zones to it. Yeah. So will this, there's the get current and selective adoption. So would this perhaps, or is there a way for us to use this to make better intelligent decisions for getting current or for selective adoption? So maybe we look at something that we customize, it gets touched often, but it's not something that we feel we need to adopt the latest feature. So maybe we hold that one off to a get current. So we're not retrofitting that one every single time. But then there are other things we look at and go, no, that one's easy. Just selectively adopt that feature because we haven't even customized it.
I'm really excited about the potential of this feature. And of course, we are trying to interpret what these things mean by 2 sentences on the roadmap here. But it says customization-centric insights delivered directly in PeopleTools. What does that mean? Well, how do you do customization analysis today? You take your source system, which is development, or your target. You take your development system and you upload all of that into your source PUM environment, which you then create the change package for the maintenance you're about to apply, and then it can give you some customization analysis. But I'm reading here that this customization-centric insights will be delivered directly in PeopleTools to allow customers to visually review the customizations within each environment, not just within the PUM, but within each environment. So straight away, I can, even copies of production I might have, I can just go straight in and do that customization analysis. Customize objects that are used versus not used, dovetailing usage monitor data with my customizations, top customized objects. Is that trying to rank how good your people code's been written? I don't know what top customized objects are, but it sounds interesting to me. I'm looking forward to seeing this in action.
Yeah.
So the top customized objects that are regularly impacted by application maintenance. So is that?
I didn't read on there. Thanks.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think
that's where I think that's going to give us that insight into, do you want to selectively adopt or do you save that for a get current? Because if it's a regularly impacted item, then maybe it's not worth the cost at this time.
And let me ask this: you mentioned selectively adopt and all that aspect, but what about the whole? Not to open this can of worms, but do I mod it or do I event mapping it? Right? Maybe if we have some of this data, it can help make some of those decisions. Because if we have data saying that this is customized, but it hasn't been touched by regular maintenance in 6 years, do I really care about event mapping? I don't know that I do. Versus, this is like every release for this thing's getting touched by Oracle. Maybe we need to revisit how we're approaching this modification versus a configuration or a customization.
Absolutely.
So.
That's a good point. So the top customized objects then becomes your work list for choosing isolation strategies rather than continued customizations. Interesting.
The other thing is, one of the things we hear regularly from customers that we work with is they fear that doing a get current is going to be a really big exercise for them. Why? Because they think they're heavily customized. Actually, they're not. They've created many bolt-ons, their own custom objects, but very, very few have actually been customized. Now, at the moment, we're using fragments of trusted and well-proven bits of SQL to help us deduce that. But actually, this roadmap item says customization-centric insights delivered directly in PeopleTools. Maybe we'll get that directly now.
Yeah, I'm reading the word insights as insights dashboards.
I read it like that as well, except because it has an uppercase I, not because. Yeah, it's uppercase I's. It's a proper noun.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, interesting.
So that's going to need to be a new index into the search framework, right? Kind of, it must be.
Oh, good point. Yeah, absolutely. Should it be RTI'd?
Well, it's a good question. How often are you modifying in production?
Yeah, exactly. Don't answer that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, don't answer that.
Yeah. So, Graham, to your point on the effort to get current. So, I've talked to a lot of customers about this. It's a question that I ask regularly in classes. How often do you get current? And I've heard it, all kinds of different answers. But the one that I heard that I love, I can't say that everyone fits this model, but it's an answer that I heard and I thought, that's amazing. Absolutely love that. The customer said, so how often do you get current? They said every release. I said, wow, 3 times a year, every release. Yes, every release. And I said, explain to me, because like you mentioned, Graham, there are people who wait every 2 years because they say it's such a big effort. And by the way, it isn't the customization that people tell me. I mean, that's what they claim. It's the testing. And that is that, I mean, I say, for example, if you pull out what was changed by Oracle in your get current, and you're just applying one PUM image. So the amount of items changed should be smaller than if you wait and go multiple PUM images. The amount of items touched gets larger with every PUM release you wait. So I asked the customer, I said, well, so you're just testing the pieces that were delivered changed, right? And they say, no, we do a 100% full system test every single time we apply maintenance. And I think that is one of the things that holds people back. It isn't retrofitting. Retrofitting is actually fairly trivial. I mean, yes, there's identifying. That's what compare reports do. But then it's for a lot of them, it's just copy paste. Done properly. It's that testing piece that. So, anyways, I asked the customer. I said, explain to me how it is. What do you do? And they said, well, we download maintenance and we apply the maintenance and we test just a little bit that was changed, and then we apply it in production. I said, well, and they say it only takes. It didn't take them very long at all. It's like a week or a weekend or something. It was not a big deal at all. And the metaphor they use is sort of like cleaning house or doing dishes. And that is that if you wait to clean, the longer you wait to clean, the longer it takes to actually clean. Whereas if you're doing regular tidying, then the effort is a whole lot smaller. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense, and I definitely subscribe to that. The longer you wait, it kind of, like you said, your change radius kind of expands, and it just everything just seems to get bigger. And not only that, but there's something to be said about repetition and getting through a pattern and a process. And this is how we test. And like, if you don't have that cadence in a shorter time period than 2 years, it is going to seem, even if it's just in your head, like this is a huge task. So what do I do? Versus like, oh yeah, this is, 2-3 times a year we do this. This is what we do. So it's easier said than done, maybe, depending on organizations and stuff. But I think it is the model that works a lot better. Once you get up and running and you get into that cadence, it definitely goes smoother. That at least I've seen successful customers do that.
Yeah, and it goes along with what you've said before, Graham, is Oracle touches the definition once every 2 years. So what that means is if you wait 2 years and you get current strategies once every 2 years, your dependency tree is basically a full upgrade every 2 years.
Well, I would love to see some analytics on the new features introduced in a particular PUM release versus enhancements to existing features, where the difference, I guess, between new objects coming in and existing objects being modified. What's the proportion? And we've done this analysis for customers many, many times, but it's always a manual exercise to try and do it with bits of SQL. And um, you might find if you're jumping, say from PUM 35 up to PUM 51 in finance, that seems like a really, really big jump. And then when you look at the size of the change package could be colossal, but you might find 85+% of that is brand new stuff that Oracle have developed between the two releases. That's not going to overwrite anything that you've got. It's not going to change anything that you're using. It's going to introduce new things that you don't even have to look at. You don't have to turn them on even, or activate them. And then there's another proportion that is modifying objects that already exist, but there'll be a tiny proportion of those that you're actually using, and an even tinier portion that you've customized. That kind of analytics is really what we need to get hold of and get quickly to help our customers make decisions about the impact of taking an update.
Yeah. Good stuff. And so if I want to move on to integrations, I saw some interesting things here in the integrations. I think the one that it's, for me, the biggest one is a new endpoint base URL can be set for REST consumer services. So the frustration that I've had with metadata, integration broker metadata specifically, if we go back to the original integration broker, PeopleTools 8.42 up through 8.47, it was XML over HTTP. They were basing it off of a pre-release idea of what web services might look like, and I think they did a really good job with it. But there were so many different pieces of metadata that were easily swapped or replaced. A great example of that is nodes. So you've got your dev, your test, your QA, your prod nodes, and then you've got your integrations. So in that case, it was messages. You would migrate your messages and your routings, and they would point to nodes, not URLs. And the frustration that I've had with REST is that REST consumption is all URLs at the service operation level. So migrations would require you to actually modify the PeopleTools metadata when you get to your prod system to point to a prod endpoint. So you're essentially at that point testing in production. That's how I felt about it. And this makes it so that the endpoint base URL becomes a separate, as far as I'm reading it, a separate definition that you could then reference from your dev, reference from your test, or you reference it from your service operation, but the actual resolution happens within the endpoint dev, test, QA, prod, etc.
Yeah, seems such an obvious feature to add in, and nice to see it there.
Yeah.
We are increasingly getting involved in integration work with other Oracle services and other external systems to PeopleSoft. REST obviously is the integration of method of choice, and actually it's not mentioned here, but something we've been exploring a lot with some of our clients is the OCI API gateway. Maybe we can talk about that sometime, but really great to see this this enhancement in here, because we all have multiple systems to maintain.
Exactly. And so, Graham, you mentioned the REST side. I would be curious if you're and would like to talk maybe another time, talk about REST service operations versus the application services framework, which the end result is pretty much the same thing. They're both used to either consume or produce REST services. I'm just curious which one people find easier to use. Anything else in integration?
I've got one that's a good call out, I believe, more for, again, the admins, but there is a new integration gateway property that I think's been a long time coming.
Hmm.
It's a way to change the default traditionally today of using the IP address of the gateway to establish the connection to the domain name. So when this is set to true, it can use the domain name. And if I'm understanding this correctly, this can really help with the SNI server name indication certs, right? Because today what you have to do is you have to go through and actually set out each service operation and version and call that out as an external operations name in your integration gateway's configuration file. So with this as the default, I'm guessing you're not going to have to call those out one by one for getting SNI certs to work. So we'll see if that's what this is going to help with. But I think it would be a great deal. It was always manageable, but having to worry about those service operations one by one based on what third-party vendor you're working with was kind of annoying as an admin in my mind. So having it be the default to include the domain name instead of the IP address is going to be a big thing.
I like that. That makes sense. Okay, so notifications, anything there that drew your attention?
No, I think on notifications, no, nothing too exciting. I think there's a little bit of catch up being played here.
Right.
If I register my phone number, of course I would expect it to try and validate that phone number. So yeah, glad that's going to be there in 8.62.
Good. Okay, and then on the administrator developer tools, so the first one I see is the cross-reference reports for event mapping, drop zones, app engine, configurable search. Interesting. I guess it's kind of captured under event mapping. I was going to say page field configurator isn't listed there, but I guess it kind of is because it would be one of the event mapping services. I have mixed feelings about this because the reason that I think we're asking for these reports is because we want to review the items that have event mapping, drop zones, page field configurator, and AE action plugins. My question is, how deep of a review and why? Because if we're just going to review them as if they were customizations, my feeling is just stop and customize, because at least the customization is going to give you a compare report that fully points out what you're doing and how to retrofit it. If our point is just to identify, okay, this is something to be aware of, I think that's okay. I don't know.
Something to test
about this. Yeah.
Well, for me, it would be just that, something to test.
Right.
I'm not going to use it to dive into the code that I wrote and figure out, is it going to work? I'm not going to do that.
Good.
This is just a signal to me. Focus here. This is where you might get some problems, and that is nothing short of really helpful.
Right. Good. Yeah. I agree. Other things under the administrator and developer tools. Oh, I see one here that I absolutely love. So new system variable to programmatically identify the cref used. So this is why that's so important to me. So event mapping and page field configurator by reference, they do not apply to components. They apply to menu component combinations and more specifically content references. In fact, everything that's related content in nature. That would be drop zones. That would be really content related actions. They're all by content reference. So I created this, I'm going to call it a bolt-on extension that I shared at Reconnect in the fall, where if I go to a component from a menu, I can click on a menu item and drill directly to event mapping for that component, or drill directly to page field configurator, drop zones, etc. To make that work, I needed to know the content reference. And the way I did that was I queried the PSP or smdefn for the menu component combination. Well, that's not exactly, yes, that's mostly good, but some of the apps delivered redundant fake cloned copies of content references by using additional attributes such as tile equals y or 1 equals 1. So it wasn't great, but And that's where this would help me, is with that extension tool. So my question is, why did they create it? Because what tool do they see? How is this going to benefit them?
I don't know.
I think we've asked that for a few of these roadmap items.
Yeah.
I'd love to know who requested that and why. What was the use case? What problem were they trying to solve? And the last one in this list, if I might just jump to it, new methods will be added to the record defin class to support adding and removing sub-records on record definitions. Why? Really? What? Like
code?
Well, the more I think about this, I have thought of one or two areas where you might do that. So imagine you were trying to build, say, like a file layout object structure dynamically in Peer.
Yeah.
In order to read in some hierarchically structured data, and you were on the fly creating a record name, not a table, or a dynamic creating a record name that you might want to add and remove subrecords to. But I can't even think where that is in PeopleSoft today. Why was it being asked for? Unlike the third bullet down on this list, a new field class property will be available to override the prompt table name dynamically at runtime. Oh my goodness, how many times have we wrestled with that as a developer?
Huge.
There it is.
That's a big one. And it was sandwiched in the middle, and I didn't even see it. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a big deal.
So that one, does that? I guess I don't know. This one actually it takes me back to the derived prompt tables using the percent edit table thing. So the challenge for me was debugging those, was finding the code that used it, and that's what I'm wondering about with this one as well. And that is, if you can just go to the metadata and see what the prompt is, you can figure it out and troubleshoot the prompt. It's when the prompt changes somewhere in the thousands of lines of people code that are loading up in that component. You're like, I don't even know where query prompt, I don't know where this data is coming from. You can trace it eventually. But it's, I don't know, for me, traces are like needles in haystacks. And so I'm always looking for magnets. Where's my magnet I can use to sift for the needle in this haystack? Interesting.
Yeah. I think, again, when we get more creative with some of these new tools and being dynamic and all this and stuff, more power in people code itself, that is the rub, right? That is the hard part of like, you got to be careful on how you use it, because maintaining it, you could write it and like, oh, I got real clever with this new feature, and then someone else is supporting it a couple years later and there's an issue. They could be cursing your name because they're not sure. Like, this is not the straightforward, metadata approach that we're all used to. So
exactly.
I could see it being really powerful in some situations, but I could see it, buried in some huge component, people go wherever. There could be concerns there, but
maybe this will help with the event mapping prompt that tries to drill into subrecords but can't. And I don't know. Other things. So we've got platforms, and that's pretty much standard type stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we'll probably hear some certification, standard certification stuff from Mark probably at the conferences this spring. And then Cloud Manager comes out. Oh no,
19's out.
19 just came out last week as time
2
of
weeks
recording
ago.
here. Yeah. So maybe we'll have another talk on that. But I think that kind of wraps it up here with this document. Outside of the generic
I
stuff.
spun up Cloud Manager 19 just last week, provisioned my first instance. Flawless.
Awesome.
Yeah, flawless. Didn't error. Nothing broke. Yeah.
I'm looking forward, Graham, to your next post on the PeopleTools easy button, which will be 8.62, right?
Yeah, well, who knows?
To tie
that is
in,
your best way. That's your best way to get access to 8.62.
Yeah,
because it gets released on Cloud Manager first. So you just use Cloud Manager to provision the latest PUM image. They're always on 8.61, and then you just hit that upgrade to 8.62 button. And Works every time.
Yes.
To tie Cloud Manager back to one topic we did glance over, which is deployment, DPK, right, and Puppet. Obviously, Cloud Manager, huge use case with the DPK. It's seemingly like they're adding more and more ways to kind of run your own DPK pre-post type steps. They did change the DPK to use the lookup function, which is I think it removes the old deprecated Hira function in Puppet. So if you're one of these customers that's doing some cool stuff with your own DPK, whether it's modifying the delivery one or doing some post, Puppet module stuff, be on the lookout for that. That could give your Puppet code a little, kick up to some of the more modern approaches to how you write this stuff with these non-deprecated functions. So it's good to see there's some progress there. And I do think that basically is driven by Cloud Manager, a lot of this with automated deployments. So that makes sense.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you both for joining me for a review of PeopleTools 8.62. And I look forward to the next time we get together.
Great, Jim. Thanks.
Yep. Good to chat, Jim and Kyle. Until next time.
All
Bye
right.
for now.
Yeah. Bye.